If Rashford were to go, Dharmesh, would United bring someone in?
They're looking to strengthen up front by the sounds of it. And they've made inquiries to Paris Saint-Germain for their French international striker, Randal Kolo Muani. And look, this is not something that's just come up in this transfer window because they've got a long-standing interest in this player. Back in the summer of 2023, they scouted Muani extensively. In the end, they opted to go to Atalanta and pay big money to sign Rasmus Højlund. But it's clear that they admire Kolo Muani, and it appears now that Muani is available again because he's only started twice in Ligue 1 this season. And I think PSG will probably listen to offers for Randal Kolo Muani. They would prefer a permanent deal, but like I say, with a big player like that, it's always very difficult to do that. Or at the very least, try and do a loan which would come with an obligation to buy come the summer. So definitely one to watch, particularly if Marcus Rashford gets a move away.
Michael, if United are in for Muani, will they have to fight for him?
Spurs like him as well. Tottenham want another forward. And Ange Postecoglou said this to us in his press conference yesterday, pre-Liverpool press conference. Spurs will be busy this January. I'm not so sure now about a defender, but I do believe Spurs will sign a forward over the next few weeks.
OK, well, Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho, people are saying, hang on, they're academy players at Manchester United. United might need to sell them. Do they?
Let's make one thing clear. Manchester United do not want to sell Kobbie Mainoo, and they do not want to sell Alejandro Garnacho. They're not actively looking to sell either of those players. However, and I think this is the case with every club, it can't just be pointed towards Manchester United as well, nobody in the squad is untouchable. Because if you could go to any squad in the country and, yeah, not for sale, and then if an outrageous offer comes along, it's going to be considered. So I think that's the case with every single player. As for Mainoo himself, we're told he's got no concerns at all over his Manchester United future. He feels valued at the club. His contract is up until 2027, with the club holding a one-year option on that contract. But they want to reward him because he's been so good for the club. They want to reward him with a new contract on improved terms. Talks have been underway over a new contract and communication lines remain open. As for Garnacho, he's got a contract that runs until 2028. And one thing I would say as well here, while Manchester United will be confident that they are compliant with profit and sustainability rules, it's clear that they would need to move some players on in order for Ruben Amorim to bring new players in to fit in the style that he wants to play. Remember, Ruben Amorim didn't actually want to join until the summer because he wanted that clean break. But it was now or never as far as United were concerned. So now he's having to learn about these players as he goes along. Hence why I think it will be a slower process. But come the summer, he wants to be in a position where United can actually go for it. But he also knows, and the board know, that homegrown players like Mainoo and other players who have come through the academy and been there since they were young boys, they would represent, as we've been talking about many times on this transfer show, pure profit on the books if they were to be sold.
Absolutely. And United have said, Michael, no player is untouchable, hence why we're talking about Garnacho and Mainoo. If you're a United fan, should that worry you?
A little bit, but you look at Manchester United at the moment and you hear any ex-player, I think there's an acceptance that it's going to take at least 2 or 3 windows for Ruben Amorim. It's clear he's got his own philosophy, but these players don't fit at all. It's been a really tough few years for Manchester United. Yes, they won the FA Cup in May, but maybe that was just one little positive on what's been a really dark year or two in terms of recruitment. But the last thing you'd imagine Ineos wanting to do is selling someone who's been such a bright part of Manchester United over the last 12 months.
Yeah, well, Ineos certainly doing things their own way, aren't they? So you never say never. There is a bright spot for Manchester United today, though, Dharmesh. Tell us.
Yeah, potentially great news, this. Ruben Amorim, the Manchester United head coach, said that this particular deal was close, and I'm talking about Amad Diallo and his future. We're told an agreement has been reached between Manchester United and Amad Diallo over a new contract. The formal announcement could come very, very soon. He had entered the final 6 months of his contract. Now, United actually had the option to extend that for a further 12 months, but they decided not to exercise that option, instead enter into talks to give him a new contract to properly reflect the good performances that he's produced for Manchester United, particularly under Ruben Amorim. So it wasn't going to be just a case of extending for another year on the current terms. They wanted to get him a new extended contract on improved terms. And I think everyone has seen, and it's been widely recognised, that Amad Diallo has been effectively Manchester United's best player since Ruben Amorim took charge at Old Trafford. So good reward, and probably a deserved reward as well.
Yeah, he's gone really well for United. Believe it or not. Right, I promised you more Manchester United. I'm going to give you more Marcus Rashford. Darmesh, is he any closer to leaving?
Possibly. I mean, what I would say is that Manchester United are aware that Marcus Rashford's brother has been in Milan, just exploring the conditions of a potential loan deal to AC Milan. But look, a number of clubs now are expected to formally approach Manchester United over a potential deal. Milan have made him their primary target for this transfer window. Borussia Dortmund, Juventus are also interested, among a number of other clubs. But just talking about Dortmund, their boss, Nuri Sahin, was asked directly about the potential signing of Marcus Rashford. He said this: anything can happen. It's not as easy as in winter as it is in summer. We'd be prepared to do something, but we'll only do it if it makes us better. We're not going to get carried away. But since then, Sky Germany have kind of poured a little bit of cold water on this by saying that maybe the deal that Dortmund would want probably wouldn't be agreeable to Manchester United, because we do know that any loan deal would require United to pay a substantial amount of the wages that Rashford earns. And even with that, Dortmund may find it a little bit too excessive to be able to pay that much. But look, never say never with that. Sky Germany are just saying at the moment, not so strong with Borussia Dortmund. But clearly, Milan is a big target for Rashford. As for United, with regard to Rashford, we understand that they are now discussing internally what the best course of action is. Do they do a straight loan? Do they do a loan with an option or an obligation at this stage? Because they need to weigh up the risks associated with the potential market value come the summer. Because if they just do a straight loan and he performs well, it will send his market value up. If they do a straight loan and he doesn't perform so well, what will that do to the market value? And the in-between stage, if they allow him to leave, is if they put an option price on it now that is probably halfway between what they want and what it is now, then they kind of hedge their bets. But then the gamble is he plays really, really well and they could have got much more money for him. So lots of things to discuss for United. We think that a permanent departure for Rashford will probably be reassessed come the summertime. But all options are still open. And that even means Rashford staying at Old Trafford beyond deadline day. A bit of news from today. Their training session, Marcus Rashford wasn't training with the rest of the squad, but I think that was planned because he was ill. He missed the game against Liverpool, and as a result, he had his own individual training session.
Been ill a lot, hasn't he, lately? Michael, tell us why Zlatan Ibrahimovic could be in amongst all of this.
Well, firstly, he's a huge fan of Marcus Rashford's, and he was a fan of his when he played alongside him in the 2016-17 season, and back then he called him England's future. Ibrahimovic is a representative, an ambassador of AC Milan, and clearly speaking highly of him. AC Milan have just come off the back of their Italian Super Cup win. They've got the charismatic Sergio Conceição as head coach now. Some fantastic shots of him in the dressing room with a big cigar, and maybe it's a fresh start for AC Milan and potentially a fresh start for Rashford.
Stevie, let's talk Kobbie Mainoo at Manchester United. And ESPN FC ran a piece, as did a lot of the papers in the United Kingdom, saying that although they don't want to sell, if they were to get rid of either Mainoo or Garnacho, 100% of the sale would go towards the PSR regulations, which would help them down the road. Chelsea were linked with Mainoo. Is this a non-starter, or potentially could you see something like this happening?
Well, there's two things of what I'd like to say. Number one is, to me, Kobbie Mainoo is at his best when his team have the ball or he has the ball. I am not convinced that Kobbie Mainoo is as good without the ball. Defensively, I don't see him making challenges. I don't see him breaking up play. I see him following runners, but unfortunately, he's always seemed to be behind them, trying to catch up. You know, he is, to me, he is no dynamic central midfielder that can defend for his team. You know, with the ball, I think absolutely he is quality. He looks cool and calm and collected. But I absolutely have question marks over Kobbie Mainoo when it comes to defending in the middle of the park. In terms of Chelsea, he again, because of that, he doesn't fit what Chelsea want to do. You know, Caicedo and Lavia in particular, you know, getting around the middle of the park, closing things down. Enzo Fernandez, not quite as, doesn't get around as good as the other two, but certainly does a lot of that. So Kobbie Mainoo doesn't fit the bill in the middle of the park. I think that the Chelsea need or Chelsea have right now. So I don't see it. And again, I'd love to hear what Oggy thinks about Mainoo, because, as I said, I am not convinced this guy can defend.
Well, it's a good point, that, because I think that although Kobbie Mainoo, like you say, Steve, he's very good with the ball, and he does kind of sometimes help the game tick for United, he isn't quick. And I think the one thing that really holds him back is that he's one-paced, and he lets players get away from him. Yeah. If the game is going in his favour, he's a very good player, Kobbie Mainoo, and he's still only young, but he doesn't have a burst of pace. And I think that will ultimately hold him back from being a kind of a world-class midfielder. I think he doesn't get around the pitch quick enough. But on saying that, if Man United had 20 players that they were willing to sell, he would be 18 or 19 on the list. He's not a player they're looking to sell. The reality is that United have got financial issues right now, and yes, you know, I was going to say in a perfect world, in an imperfect world where they had to sell somebody to get some money in, he would be one they would look to do. But there are lots and lots of players ahead of Kobbie Mainoo, and the reality is he will end up negotiating a new contract. His current deal expires in 2027, and United have an extra option on that. So there's no rush to do a deal with him. But I think there's also an element of this where I think people at United are trying to, you know, dampen expectations on certain players and salaries right now. This isn't the Man United of Ed Woodward. They're not throwing money around on wages and fees. They're trying to be sensible. So if people around Kobbie Mainoo are trying to get a new deal at silly money, this is a message to say ain't going to happen. But I'm with Stevie. I think ultimately, defensively and in terms of mobility getting around the pitch, he isn't quite there.
Can I just add, just one thing from a Chelsea perspective. You know, I think Chelsea fans need to remember as well, whether they like it or not, and I have my own issues with the situation, and I agree with both the boys. Chelsea are expecting Kendry Páez, the very electric Ecuadorian star, coming in this summer. André Santos as well on loan, who's coming back. Estevao, another great talent as well. Not necessarily the same position of Mainoo, but my point remains. This roster is just going to get bigger rather than smaller, even before Mainoo. To me, Mainoo's best option, if he doesn't stay with Manchester United, is I think he should just go to the Bundesliga, go to a place where maybe can help him grow a little bit at 19 years old. The Premier League might not be the best option right now if he doesn't stay with Manchester United. But from a Chelsea perspective, there's a lot of talent still yet to come at Cobham, and it would just be another waste, I think.
Let's talk about a top-flight English central defender with someone who played in the English top flight as a top defender, Stevie Nicol. Mark Gahey has been linked with Chelsea. We continue that theme. Badiashile, Fofana, both hurt right now. It's Colwill and Achimpong was the latest. Would Gahey to Chelsea make sense? Because obviously those two have got a past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense. That's absolutely the one spot I think they need to strengthen. I'm not a huge fan of what they have right now. I'm not a huge fan of Fofana. I'm not a huge fan of Tolson. I'm not a huge fan of Disasi either. You know, I think absolutely Chelsea needs strengthening there. And you know, if you look around at what there is, then Gahey absolutely would fit the bill. To me, it seems a little bit of a no-brainer. There's no question he ain't going to be staying at Palace for too much longer. And I think Chelsea 100% need a centre-back. And listen, he's no Franz Beckenbauer, but you know what you're getting. And I think from a defensive point of view, I'll settle for that every day of the week. When I can put a centre-back on the field and I know exactly what I'm going to get from him, then I think it makes sense for Chelsea.
The last one on Transfer Talk this week is Marcus Rashford. Now, if you've already heard this week's podcast of the Football Reporters with Rob, with James and with Ollie, then you'll have heard what Oggie's about to say. But I think it's fair, if you haven't, because you spent a decent chunk of the start of your podcast this week talking about Marcus Rashford and potential landing spots. So please let us know if you heard anything further about where Marcus Rashford may end up if it's not going to be Manchester United keeping hold of him.
Well, there's still a chance that might happen. You know, that may ultimately be the best option for everybody because he's on massive wages. He's a Manchester boy and United need goals. But if he was prepared to get his head down, Marcus Rashford, and work to suit Ruben Amorim, then I think staying there would be the best thing for all concerned. But that's not going to happen. It's quite clear that he wants out. Now, there aren't many options for him. You know, AC Milan are supposedly interested, but I'm not too sure how solid it is because first of all, the wages would be a problem. Secondly, we've got Rafael Leao and Christian Pulisic who like to play off the left, where Rashford likes to play. He hasn't scored many goals recently. So I don't quite see what the appeal of Marcus Rashford is. At 27, with probably the past 18 months, he's not performed. So options are limited. You know, Borussia Dortmund is a possibility in the Bundesliga, a kind of a Jadon Sancho-style loan. But right now, I think the Marcus Rashford camp's a lot of heavy lifting in terms of driving up a market and suggesting there's a lot of interest, when the reality is there isn't. If there was, then United would be happy to.
He's not having a great time of it at PSG. He's been linked with Spurs. Would that be a move that would suit both?
It would suit Daniel Levy and PSG's Nasser Al-Khelaifi because they're very good friends. And I think that's what this is. It's just like an amicable situation here. I personally, from a footballing perspective for Tottenham, I don't like it at all. Muani is very talented, but he's very inconsistent. And that's the last thing that Tottenham needs. Another inconsistent player, Exhibit A in Timo Werner. So, you know, I think he's probably a player that probably needs to go to a team that's more secure of who they are and trying to prove himself, as opposed to go to a team where there's a lot of inconsistency, there's a lot of back and forth in terms of the system, and also somebody that's entering a Premier League that he's never played in. So for Levy and Nasser Al-Khelaifi, I'm sure it's great. For everybody else, well, maybe it's specifically Tottenham, I don't like it.
Here's a 1-minute write-up on the Manchester United transfer news involving Mainoo, Garnacho, Diallo, Kolo Muani, and Rashford in January 2025. Manchester United is navigating a critical January transfer window with significant updates on several key players. Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho could be on the move due to the club's need to comply with financial regulations, with talks for new contracts stalling. Chelsea has shown interest in Mainoo, while Garnacho's future might hinge on lucrative offers, given his contract runs until 2028. On a brighter note, Amad Diallo is close to signing a new deal, indicating his long-term stay at Old Trafford. The club is also looking at an ambitious loan move for PSG's Randal Kolo Muani to bolster their attack. Meanwhile, Marcus Rashford's days at United might be numbered, with interest from AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund, and Juventus. His desire for new challenges could lead to a transfer, though his high wages present a challenge. These moves illustrate United's strategy to balance youth development with financial sustainability.